Hello, everyone, and welcome to Aaron Shack Politics. We have a lot of things to discuss today, but one of the biggest bombshells that we're going to talk about today is going to have to do with the Biden-Harris administration and why I'm ultimately starting to believe that we probably couldn't have campaigned against Harris to change her point of view about Gaza. The fact that the DNC didn't allow Palestinians to speak out. The fact that she spoke out of both sides of her mouth saying, I believe in a free Israel, but I'd love to help Palestinians in Gaza and make sure that they at least get food while we're bombing them. We have basically infinite amounts of people protesting in the streets around the world. And that doesn't change what happens in the Oval Office. You think Donald Trump cares that no matter what you're protesting about, it doesn't change what's going on in there. That perception does not daze politicians on either side. So I'm starting to believe that we definitely couldn't have changed Harris's mind on this. And that's usually the point of view that we're arguing about, is saying we really can't change Trump's mind because he sees Palestinians as subhuman. He sees the word Palestinian as an insult. Whereas at least with Harris, we could call her up and we could rally up numbers. We could meet up at town halls with our representatives and campaign them. And it's really hard to do when the AIPAC owns everyone and when gerrymandering gets in the way. When every single issue that we face as a country blocks us from solving the Palestine, issue, as people like to call it. Because in order to solve that, we have to get money out of our politics. In order to get money out of our politics, we have to solve gerrymandering. And in order to solve gerrymandering, you got to have term limits. And in order to resolve term limits, we got to put in a whole new group of people because all the elderly in Congress, they want to be there for life. And then the next row of people that are already signed up want to be there for their entire lives and get a free ride and make tons of money and have a wonderful home, right? People are in public service for the wrong reasons. They're not in it to help people. They are in there to make a living for themselves and for generations of their family and to have their beliefs and their policies last for their entire life and potentially the lives of the next generation or generations. So let's get into it. Let's talk about why. But, I think we have to realize that people either voted against Harris, or didn't vote at all. There were several different ways that you could punish the Democratic Party for choosing to stand with genocidal maniacs in Israel and to be part of the problem, to be 100% complicit because you are sending the weapons and you're sending even more weapons, even as you hear and see about the war crimes and as they're live streamed to every television, every phone, every app on the internet. You can't not see it and you can't not acknowledge it. So they were punished, but have they learned the lesson? That's the problem that we see now, is that if Kamala Harris is indeed, as rumors say, planning to campaign again in 2028 and is already calling people in to the country club to meet with her and her husband and inviting everybody in, getting donors lined up, talking about, what are we going to do next? That leads to the idea, to me, that they didn't learn a damn thing. They were just like, we didn't have enough time and enough money. No, you had billions of dollars that you blew within a 90-day period, which, fair enough. It's not enough time to run an effective campaign. But as we're going to look at during today's show, the numbers would have been with you if you opposed genocide. You could have won this clean and free. You could have whooped Donald Trump and sent him packing, and then maybe he would have been tried for some of his crimes and not just, had all the charges dropped, essentially. But because Harris and Biden stood so staunchly as genocide heirs. This is where we are. And because their people in the UN voted against every resolution, every ceasefire, and every humanitarian procedure that they were putting forward, staunchly opposed by the US and Israel. You're on the wrong side of history. So now it's time for the next generation to decide, what are we going to do? How are we going to help? Are we just going to sit here and tweet and TikTok and all that stuff? Are we just going to sit here and yell at each other and debate Trumpers and MAGA rats until the next election comes around and we realize that we didn't change a damn thing, that the party didn't learn a single lesson, and that you're hitching your trailer to the wrong truck here, and they haven't learned a damn thing, they haven't changed, and all they're doing is just saying something to get your vote, and then once they're in office, they're beholden to AIPAC and their lobbyists, anyone who gives them money, not the average person. They thought that people in Michigan, they thought, whatever you want to call it, the Arab vote, the Muslim vote, people that ally with Palestine, Palestinians, whatever you want to call it, they thought that you guys didn't matter. They thought that because, oh, well, they're only this % of the electorate, not enough to matter. Oh, well, you lost. And the Palestinian issue, what's happening in Gaza, was the main reason why. You can see it in the polling data. Post-election, we study this stuff. And that was one of the biggest things. The next thing's the dinner table issues, the health care, the price of food, groceries, rent, gasoline, all these things, right? Biden may have done a lot of things to help the economy, but it didn't feel like it. And that's crazy, but people vote based on their emotions. They don't vote on the numbers and the reality, and Democrats are terrible at advocating for all the good things that they've done. They just don't pat themselves on the back enough. They don't speak out enough about their wins. And so Biden did all these great things, but at the end of the day, it didn't feel like it affected us. The economy may be in great shape, but if my rent keeps going up and up and up and up, and my paycheck is just right here, and maybe it goes up like 10 cents or 40 cents or whatever it is, it doesn't change a thing for me in reality. That's where we're at. And this next story is absolutely huge because I believe it changes everything. So we're going to pull it up right now. This is courtesy of Dropsite News, and they're covering a sweeping Israeli Channel 13 investigation. And I'm going to break it down for you here. Biden officials admit they never pressured Israel for a ceasefire. Yeah, so all of a sudden, the Biden-Harris, you thought we'd be able to campaign them and get them to come around on Gaza? Absolutely not, because they didn't ask one fucking time. Not one fucking time for a ceasefire. It was all just pretend, all just posturing and, yeah, you bet we're going to do it. Sure, I'll ask Netanyahu. Just kidding. No, I won't. Hang up the phone. So, as Israeli leaders boast of playing Washington. So this is a quote from former Israeli Ambassador Michael Herzog. God did the state of Israel a favor that Biden was the president during this period. We fought in Gaza for over a year, and the administration never came to us and said, ceasefire now. It never did, and that's not to be taken for granted. So Israel's pretty happy about that. So let's keep reading. So this is a sweeping Israeli Channel 13 investigation that exposed the Biden administration's complicity in Israel's 19-month war on Gaza, which, war actually means genocide in this context. 9 top Biden officials acknowledged avoiding real pressure on Israel, even as the death toll surpassed 30,000. Israeli leaders openly bragged they dragged out the war, playing for time until Donald Trump's return. Former National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Ambassador Tom Nedes, and others defended their unwavering support for Israel, even as they admitted enabling a campaign one U.S. aide described as killing and destroying for the sake of killing and destroying. So some people brought up the idea that Pope Francis should have excommunicated Biden from the church for these war crimes. If he had known about this before he passed, I think he actually would have done it. This is not the work of a Catholic man. Not one bit. So let's move forward. Let's see what the investigation revealed here. So, killing and destroying for the sake of killing and destroying. Ilan Goldberg, senior national security aide, described the war's aimlessness. If they're never going to do this, it doesn't matter what the outcome is. Hamas is still going to control Gaza. You're just killing and destroying for the sake of killing and destroying, but you're not building an alternative. U.S. officials pushed a post-war plan modeled on the anti-ISIS campaign, which we all know how that went. Didn't work out very well. Proposing that Arab states temporarily secure Gaza, but Netanyahu blocked it, refusing any role for the Palestinian Authority, which honestly, the PA is honestly just the right hand of Israel. There's nothing independent about that. It's not the Palestinian people governing themselves, okay? It's all just another arm of Israel doing Israel's bidding. There's a lot of corruption in the governance of Palestinians. So, far-right Israeli ministers Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich openly pushed for reoccupying Gaza and rebuilding settlements. Netanyahu refused to advance alternatives, keeping the door open to their demands. We fought for over a year, and the administration never said ceasefire now. Israeli officials were blunt about the benefits of Biden's passivity. Former Ambassador Michael Herzog declared, of course, the quote as we said earlier, Biden aides privately admitted Netanyahu was dragging out the war. He's undercutting it every step of the way, said Goldberg. All the security people are coming out and saying it. I mean, it's all clear as day. He also revealed that there were internal discussions in Washington about Biden giving a speech to pressure Israel politically, possibly triggering new elections there. But Biden backed off because, like he said, I'm a Zionist. That's what he said. Biden proudly on live television called himself a Zionist. Also, the U.S. covered for Israeli war crimes and blocked aid in this report. State Department advisor Stacey Gilbert resigned after being cut out of the process of drafting a legally required arms compliance report. The final version cleared Israel of violating U.S. law. Despite overwhelming evidence of aid obstruction, Gilbert called it shocking in its mendacity, adding, "Everyone knows that it is not true." Even as settlers looted Gaza-bound trucks and Israel blocked humanitarian aid, Biden certified compliance and kept the weapons flowing. Netanyahu sabotaged captives, release talks to prolong the war. So, for all the people saying, oh, if you just return the hostages, this will all be over. That was never a play. That was never in play. That's just a talking point. It means nothing. So, Biden officials revealed that Netanyahu deliberately tanked negotiations, fearing a deal would force him to end the war. American-Israeli hostage Hirsch Goldberg Poland was scheduled for release the day he was executed. Amos Hochstein confirmed there's no doubt those hostages would be alive. So, I mean, as the rest of us knew, these hostages died on both Biden and Netanyahu's watch. Netanyahu's public campaign to retain control over Gaza's Philadelphia corridor was viewed by Biden officials as a smokescreen to kill the deal. Biden backed Israel even after Netanyahu publicly undermined and insulted him. Biden once told Netanyahu he was, quote, full of shit, and hung up the phone mid-call. But as Ambassador Tom Nidas put it, Biden saw Netanyahu as a manipulator, a magician, but he stood by him through the end. In May 2024, Biden announced he was pausing a shipment of 2,000-pound bombs. We talked about these on the channel, over concerns about their use in Gaza because of collateral damage, of course. Days later, Netanyahu accused the U.S. of freezing broader arms deliveries, reportedly pausing Biden's plans to restore the paused shipment. Next, the Saudi deal collapsed because Israel refused to make any concessions. Now, when you negotiate, both sides have to make concessions. Doesn't matter. Not everybody wins, but for Netanyahu, he always has to come out on top. Biden officials described how a U.S.-Saudi normalization deal, coupled with defense and economic pacts, was nearly complete, but it required Israel to accept a political horizon for Palestinians. Dan Shapiro, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, explained, "We always understood that the Israeli government depended on far-right ministers who would try to block that commitment. It might require an election or a coalition shuffle." Former U.S. Ambassador Jack Lew called Israel's refusal to engage kind of shocking. Amos Hochstein said, "I don't understand the decision not to grab that opportunity is the most important strategic move Israel can make." Herzog claimed Netanyahu deliberately stalled, hoping Trump would return to office and take credit. "It was my understanding that Trump preferred for the deal to wait until he got into office so that he would be the one to do it." Now, there's a clarification that Drop Site shared here. Negotiators were discussing adding an American-Israeli hostage, Hersh Goldberg, Poland, to the release list on the same day he was executed. He was not yet formally scheduled for release. Amos Hochstein said there was no doubt those hostages would be alive. So, what does that mean? How does that make everyone feel? You've been lied to, the entire administration. and Harrison Biden, 100% complicit. Because you know what? Even though it goes against policy, against norms, to turn against your president that you're serving as a vice president when you're running a political campaign and say, yeah, we were wrong on that. This is what I'm going to do for you as your president. She could have done that. She could have said it. It would have been unprecedented. It would have been wild. And it would have won her the election. But she didn't. She wanted to double down just like Biden. She's just a rabid Zionist just like him. So, do I look forward to her running in 4 years? 2028, whatever? Not really. Do I look forward to any of the lists? Not really. Democrats don't really have someone that's going to stand up to these Zionists, to put an end to the genocide. I don't even think Democrats are going to solve the issues that matter to you at home, like the cost of your health care, the rising cost of rent, all these things. And they say, well, if we just get a majority in the presidency, the House, the Senate, just give us everything, right? We'll make it happen. How did that work with abortion? How did that work with literally every other issue? Look where we're sitting right now. We got Trump and the stacked Supreme Court that obeys his every whim. And now, I mean, he's got majorities. Democrats couldn't do much if they even wanted to right now. And I'm trying to tell you that they don't want to do anything. They're telling you, they're posturing, they're having grand speeches, they're sitting on the front steps of the Capitol trying to look special so that you'll remember them when it's election time. You'll think, oh yeah, Cory Booker gave that one speech, and he sat on the steps of the Capitol, but he didn't really do anything. He wasn't really filibustering and stopping any sort of bill from being passed. It's all just posturing. Nothing a real leader would actually do to bring about actual change. So, next, we're adding on to this, because I know the Kamala Harris defenders Kamala Harris defenders are going to come out in hordes when I say anything mean or critical, single thing in opposition, right? In this report from Zateo, Democratic primary voters prefer progressive approaches. And number one, the Israel-Palestine conflict, or genocide as it were. The U.S. should restrict military aid to Israel until it stops attacks on civilians in Gaza, supports Palestinian rights, and commits to a long-term peace process. 71%. Majority. There you go. You could win. You could win the whole damn election. The U.S. should continue military aid to Israel and support its right to defend itself while encouraging efforts to reduce civilian harm and promote long-term peace. That's 21%. 21%. So it shows that we are pretty united on this. The only people who aren't are the people in Congress being bribed by AIPAC, right? And you can go down the line with transgender sports policy, economic policy, healthcare, climate policy. Immigration is the only thing that we're split like pretty fairly down the middle on what our approach should be. So we look at this next one. Democratic primary voters say Israeli military aid should be restricted, not continued, by a 50-point margin. So if we look at this, try full screen that for there. Top line, under 45, 45 plus even the ideologies from very liberal to somewhat liberal to moderate, it's still over 62% that are staunchly for restricting military aid, supporting Palestinian rights, and committing to long-term peace. These small percentages on the right side are pro-Israeli. They want to reduce civilian harm and promote long-term peace. You don't get that. You don't get that unless you bring an end to this conflict and you give the Palestinians their land back. And arguably, it's a one-state solution. So, such numbers were striking given how the Kamala Harris campaign refused to diverge from the Biden administration on several issues, infamously on Israel and Palestine. That stubborn refusal contributed to Harris's eventual loss. And in the months since Donald Trump took power, the world has witnessed an even more severe ramp-up of violence against Palestinians and repression of their supporters in the U.S. The new polling underscores that Democratic voters have coalesced on opinion starkly different from what the Biden-Harris administration maintained during the final year of its presidency. And in the wake of Democrats' loss to Trump, the party's at a crossroads with widespread discontent. While hundreds and thousands of people take to the streets and protest or to attend action-demanding rallies led by Bernie Sanders and AOC, some more centrist figures suggest the opposition do less opposing and more letting Trump hurt himself. Roll over and play dead, as one proponent writes. But it's not just crowd sizes. These poll numbers indicate the party base's frame of what's possible, or at least what's needed, is shifting. And so while it shows that Buttigieg, Booker, AOC, all these others are leading in polling for who would lead a hypothetical Democratic primary without Harris, with Buttigieg in the lead, I don't think it's enough to move the needle. These people are not what your politics align with. And it's either going to lead to another election where either we see a lot of people stay home or a lot of people vote for the opposition. Whatever that opposition may be, Democrats may have to learn their lesson again. And that's going to be a real damn shame, because that's a waste of 4 years. It's a waste of our democracy literally eroding under Trump's rule. You only get one more shot for a comeback here if we're fading into oligarchy and authoritarianism, right? If we're literally having policies enacted that's making America look like Hitler's Germany. If we're seeing people going to El Salvadorian camps and prison in the same way that people were sent to Austria to a prison camp, right? It's the same stuff happening. And we're seeing people that are speaking up for Palestinians, protesters, college students get deported and sent to these very prisons, either in Louisiana and other words, and sent to those states so that they would have to be tried in those states where they would have a court that is completely against them. We're seeing people straight up disappeared on the streets for this stuff. This is where we are. Now, next, we're going to talk about Palestinians that are in Israeli custody. We've talked about this quite a bit. But why has Israel imprisoned 10,000 plus Palestinians? Can't find my thing here. Technical thing there. All right. Palestinians in Israeli custody, right? Nearly 10,000, including some 3,500 administrative detainees held without charge or trial. And I've talked about this over and over and over until the cows come home, about the idea that they can just hold you for no reason, no charges, indefinitely, something that can't be done in the United States. You usually have a minimum amount of time that has to go by where they have to charge you, or you and your lawyer can just walk right out the door. So, on April 17th, every year, Palestinian Prisoners' Day is commemorated to highlight the plight of those held in Israeli jails and their struggle for freedom against the Israeli occupation. So you can see where various prisons are: detention centers, interrogation centers, military courts. And look at the disparity in numbers here. 400 are children, 27 women, right? And you can see Ahmad Manasra's case, which we've previously talked about on the channel. He was 13. He was with his cousin Hassan, who allegedly stabbed 2 Israeli settlers near an Israeli settlement in occupied East Jerusalem. Hassan, who was only 15, was shot and killed by an Israeli citizen. Ahmad was attacked by an Israeli mob and rammed by a car, suffering fractures to his skull and internal bleeding. Because they could not sentence him until he turned 14, they held him until then. Could you imagine? Now the laws are changed, so they can charge children as adults, and they gladly do. So they held him when he was sentenced to 12 years in prison, later reduced to 9.5 years. He was charged with attempted murder, despite the court accepting that he had not participated in any attacks. Weird how that works. In 2021, an external doctor was allowed to visit Ahmad for the first time. The psychiatrist from Doctors Without Borders reported that Manasra suffers from schizophrenia. Who wouldn't after this amount of trauma? 2022, an Israeli court dropped the terrorism charges against Ahmad. He continued to be held in solitary confinement, which is also torture for long amounts of time, further worsening his mental health. 2025, he's released at age 23 after serving more than 9 years. This is the one-sided justice system, right? So look at how many are here. 5,250 political prisoners before October of 2023, and then 9,900 as of April 2025. They have easily doubled the amount of people that they are abducting and throwing into jail, whether they're resisting or not. 15 Palestinians are detained by Israeli forces for every one that are freed. So, them releasing these prisoners doesn't mean a damn thing, because they're multiplying the amount that they are taking and releasing one to a small round of applause, right? And look here, 1793 Palestinian prisoners freed for every 38 Israeli captives that are freed. Look at the disparities on these days where they were freeing various prisoners back and forth. 90 prisoners for every 3 captives. That means 30 Palestinians are equal to 1 Israeli, right? If we break it down with some math, right? And for these 4 captives, 200 prisoners. It just keeps going up. So all these different numbers. And down here at the bottom, captives, dead bodies. And notice that they always call Palestinians prisoners. Now they are coming out of a prison, but they're hostages as well. Because they're not in there. Prison implies that you committed a crime and that you were charged for it. And that you actually did said crime. Not that you were wrongfully convicted or not even there or not even guilty. 1 million Palestinians have been detained since 1967. 1 out of every 5 members of a Palestinian family have been imprisoned by Israeli forces, disrupting social structures and stability. So when we talk about this being a government that is not a democracy, that is not a democracy where all people are treated equally, where it is an apartheid state, where one class of people are treated good and another class are treated as subhuman. This is what the Irish see in the shared Palestinian struggle. This is what African Americans see in the shared Palestinian struggle. This is what South Africa sees in their apartheid that they handled, and why they are coming after Israel for the very same thing, if not worse, arguably. Next, I want to have us react to this video here. This is from David Hurst, the editor-in-chief of Middle East Eye. So let's go ahead and take a look. Oh, hang on. So this is David Hurst, editor-in-chief of Middle East Eye.
Call Gaza what you will. Killing fields, an endless loop of blood, pain and death. The world's largest concentration camp, or, as the population of Israel appears to be intent on doing, you can ignore it altogether. The Ashkenazi Jews of Tel Aviv sip their morning cappuccinos and fret about their yoga teachers just 1 hour's drive away from the most appalling scenes the world has witnessed since Srebrenica. But there's one thing none of them understand. Hamas won't surrender. To think that its leaders in Gaza will take the money and run, as Fatah did, is to reveal, after 18 months of the most extreme war and 2 months of starvation, how little Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu understands his enemy. The last Israeli offer would have amounted to an act of surrender. Hamas was told to give up all the hostages in exchange for 45 days of food and water, and then to disarm. Hamas replied it is prepared to release all the hostages in exchange for a number of Palestinian prisoners and offer a long-term hudna, or truce, in which which it would not redig its tunnels or develop its weapons, and cede governance of Gaza to other Palestinian factions. But it has not budged from the two conditions that it set at the start of the war. It would not disarm, and it wants the total withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Strip and a final end to the war. It's become repeatedly clear that the impasse to securing a negotiated settlement lies with Netanyahu himself. On two occasions he has signed deals with Hamas only to break them unilaterally. On the last occasion in January, he agreed to a phased ceasefire, which secured the release of 33 hostages, in which Israel was supposed to begin negotiations on a second phase and a permanent ceasefire. Netanyahu tore up that agreement, and US President Donald Trump let him do it, even though this was a piece of paper that the new president himself had claimed credit for. By common consent, Netanyahu only went back to war to save his coalition from impending defeat in a vote on the budget. Any military objectives have long since been exhausted. Gaza has not only been under total blockade for 2 months, but Israel has been bombing the warehouses in which the remaining food is kept. After 52 days of total blockade, Israel is openly trying to starve Gaza into submission. Sources in Israel's Southern Command, who spoke to Walla, estimated that in 2 weeks a significant crisis would begin in the Gaza Strip regarding food, medical equipment and medicines. The army shows no concern for the people of Gaza themselves and only see acute humanitarian suffering through the lens of Hamas forcing Israel to deliver food and medicine through reports in the international media. There are many reasons why Hamas will not surrender to the nightly punishment it and Gaza is taking. Hamas had its first rank of leadership, its civilian government, its police and every functioning hospital wiped out, and yet it continues to resist substantial offers of money to go into exile. The late Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat would have gone into exile long ago, as he did after the Palestine Liberation Organization forces were surrounded in West Beirut in 1982. Fatah would have flown the coop by now. But these precedents don't apply to Hamas. Why? First and foremost, if the collapse of the Israeli army and the atrocities carried out in southern Israel on the 7th of October changed Israel forever, so too has the decimation of Gaza changed the Palestinian cause forever. Gaza has become sacred turf for Palestinians everywhere. Neither Hamas nor any other resistance group can be separated from the people they are fighting for. As the collective suffering increases, so does the collective will to stay on their land, as the unarmed farmers of South Hebron have shown. Furthermore, there's no more persuasive proponent of the imperative to resist occupation than the behaviour of the Israeli state itself. This is an amorphous, persistent, toxic invader of other people's space. Israel can never have enough land, nor enough control. It always seeks more. It can never stop making its religion dominate all other religions in this space. At Easter time, Christians are as much victims of these acts of supremacy as Muslims are. Israel cannot abide by a two-state solution because there was only ever one state in the minds of its creators and their descendants. Itamar Ben-Gvir, Bezalel Smotrich and Netanyahu are collectively only finishing the job of eradicating Palestinians from the land of Israel that David Ben-Gurion started and then stopped. It's a recurrent and convenient myth to separate the various tribes of Israel on the Palestinian issue because no meaningful differences exist. It is no coincidence that at the very time there is a surge of Jews praying at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Israeli Supreme Court voted unanimously to dismiss a petition filed by several human rights organizations demanding the resumption of delivery of humanitarian aid in Gaza. The State of Israel in all its forms, religious and secular, is pursuing the same goal, even while these tribes are at war with each other. Hamas's surrender, and with it Gaza, would today be tantamount to the surrender of the Palestinian cause itself. Not because all Palestinians are religious or Fatah is that unpopular, but because for most Palestinians, resistance represents the only route to the end of occupation. The scale of the suffering that Israel has inflicted on all Palestinians within its reach, in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Jerusalem, and in Israel alike, has meant that Hamas's fate is Palestine's too. But Hamas differs from Fatah in that it is a religious organisation. It started this war over the incursions of Jewish settlers into Al-Aqsa Mosque, and Palestinians in Gaza have turned to their religion to make sense of the butchery they've been subjected to. Rifat Radwan, the 23-year-old paramedic whose dying words were captured on his phone, begged Allah to forgive him for not having prayed regularly 5 times a day. He was not that observant, but he was religious enough to beg forgiveness in his dying moments. If ever there was a symbol of the bravery and sacrifice Palestinians in Gaza are making, Radwan was it. On his deathbed, his belief in a divine leader would not be crushed, nor will Gaza's. Whatever fate awaits it as an organisation, Hamas already believes it has achieved its strategic objective. This was to propel the Palestinian pursuit of self-determination in a state of their own back right up to the top of the world's human rights agenda. During the past 3 years, the US public views of Israel have turned negative. Pew Research reports more than half of adults in the US, 53%, express an unfavourable opinion of Israel, an increase of 9 percentage points from before the 7th of October. Palestine is winning the war of public opinion, and Israel is losing it, especially in countries where Hamas is a proscribed organisation. If Israel seeks to finish this conflict for good by force, it can be assured the same objective is seared into the consciousness of Palestinians too. The longer Netanyahu continues his doomed campaign in Gaza, the closer major European countries like France will come to recognising a Palestinian state. Trump's envoys are currently pursuing 3 sets of complex negotiations simultaneously, and they are learning the hard way how intractable each is. If Trump's negotiations with Iran falter, Netanyahu will renew his pressure to bomb the nuclear sites, with no solution for Gaza being found. Decision time for Netanyahu, the pragmatist, is coming, and he will not have as many cards to play as he currently thinks he has. For military powers as large as America and NATO, the Taliban proved too much. So did the resistance in Iraq. For a country as small and as dependent on the US as Israel is, a forever war in Gaza is even less sustainable. It would be wise for Israel to cut its losses now and pull out of Gaza before it loses more on the world stage. Once the aura of invincibility is smashed, as it was on October the 7th, it's gone for good.
There you have it. Well said.
Call Gaza what you will.
Now I want to talk about next about Musab Katawi, about his 3 years in Israeli detention, and about his struggles after being released. So let's pull it up.
Musab Katawi. He was held in an Israeli prison for 3 years, and last week he was released with the Star of David shaved onto his head.
He pushed my head into a rubbish bin and drew the Star of David on my head.
This is just the latest example of Israel weaponizing this religious symbol to mark their territory. It's hardly a new phenomenon. In August 2023, before Israel began its war on Gaza, Israeli forces were accused of imprinting the Star of David onto a Palestinian man's cheek in the occupied West Bank. In 2024, Palestinian prisoners were released by Israel with clothes marked with the same symbol. Refugee camps, homes, stores, mosques, tagged with it.
The new swastika.
This article from Al Jazeera shows satellite images of the Star of David carved into Gaza that can be seen from space. The image was drawn by Israeli army tanks on top of the destroyed homes of Palestinians in Gaza. So the list goes on. Lebanese writer and researcher Elia Ayub described Israel's latest use of religious symbology in Musab Katawi's case as unsurprising, saying,
I don't know if at this point this shocks me, to be honest. It's been 18 months of them doing this pretty consistently. What's more shocking is how this doesn't shock, I guess, the rest of the world. It's not like a point of debate on the BBC. It's not like something that prompts a response from, David Lammy, the foreign minister, or anything like that. It's not a topic of conversation.
The Star of David has been around for thousands of years, and what it has come to symbolize has varied greatly through an array of different contexts. But when it's carved into a prisoner's scalp or burned into skin, what happens to its meaning? And what is this doing to Jewish identity? Jewish peace activist Anne Lippman wrote an article in November about how she stopped wearing her Star of David necklace because of what she described as becoming a symbol of supremacy and fascism. From Palestine's occupied West Bank, where she currently works to document ongoing settler violence, she said,
"There was just a day where I looked in the mirror and I realized this symbol no longer represents Jewish identity. This symbol represents Zionism, Israel, the destruction of the Palestinian people. I try not to live in that shame, But again, part of that is trying to move myself away from feeling the need to express my identity through these symbols that now mean something so different.
Jewish-American anti-Zionist writer Amanda Galenda also shared her view on what Israel has done to the Star of David.
And I grew up in synagogue. I grew up imbued in the Jewish community. And so, of course, for me, the Star of David was really positive, really associating with my own Jewish faith. Palestinians didn't choose for the people who stole their land and killed them to come waving the Star of David and identifying as Jewish. So that is the symbol that the occupation chooses to represent itself when it rapes mothers, when it kidnaps fathers, when it kills children. So it's the symbol that flies in the flag, and that is our responsibility as Jewish people to address. So I don't associate with the Star of David anymore, and I haven't for years.
The Star of David has survived exile, pogroms, and genocide. But now it's being used in a different way by soldiers, by settlers, by a state. So will the symbol be able to recover from this?
Just like Judaism itself, how it existed before this ideology of Zionism, before the state of Israel became synonymous with Jewish identity. And in the same way, I think there can again be a time where the Star of David, where Judaism, where all these things no longer symbolize fascism like they do right now.
The entirety of Zionism, the entirety of Israel needs to end. And that is the only solution to ending the conflation with the Star of David as a symbol of this fascist, cruel entity. That is the answer for Jewish people looking for an answer.
This is Musab Qatawi.
That's 100%
He was
correct.
held in an Israeli prison for...
That's where we're at. There can be no stepping back. It's either Zionism and Israel as it is gone, and a one-state solution where, you know, the people that are living there and the Palestinians have a right to return, and they can live equally, truly equally, as they did before 1948. There you go. Now we need to also show you this clip where this man in Gaza, it's a bunch of paramedics, are saying that children, all the targets are children, every bombing kills a child. So once again, paramedics in Gaza saying children, all the targets are children, every bombing kills a child. Children, all the targets are children, every bombing kills a child. Take a video on your phone, not a single adult. We show up on the cameras, on the media, telling you to save us, but to no avail. What can we do? We're exhausted. We sleep and wake up to bombing, wake up to death, all night and day. Bombing is ongoing. People feel our pain. Consider them your children. What would you do if they were your children? Look at the blood, children's blood. They're frustrated, going through the worst PTSD you can imagine. Feel our pain. We're exhausted. And whom are you taking these videos? We've been suffering for 2 years. And I think everybody needs to see this. They need to see the frustration and the anger and the suffering that they're going through for some of it to click with some of you. And it's a shame. It shouldn't take this much. It shouldn't take this long. You should know from the first video of children being bombed and shot and beheaded and all these things, Palestinian children, that it's wrong. And that anyone in charge of doing it needs to be in prison for the rest of their lives, and that this government cannot exist. Now next we have Israel bombing tents in a Gaza safe zone, as they call it, as the death toll soars. So this is the moment an Israeli missile struck tents in Gaza, and you can literally see that they paused the moment. You can actually see the missile hitting tents. This is where people who are displaced go to seek refuge. It's not combatant zone. And Israel designated this area of Al-Mawasi a safe zone, as they call it. But has never stopped bombing it. Never. So they've been bombing the Gaza Strip since the ceasefire collapsed. 100 Palestinians have been killed in the past 48 hours alone. This is as of April 20th. Israel's prime minister has ordered its military to increase pressure on Hamas, claiming it'll work to retrieve the remaining captives. It hasn't. He says we will not end the war of awakening. It's a genocide. And he keeps saying that we're going to eliminate Hamas and all this other stuff.
For months, we've been screaming at the top of our lungs that the only way to bring everyone home is through a deal that would end the war.
There you go.
That is the will of the Israeli public. And it is the best interest of the state of Israel. But Netanyahu refuses to put an end to this war for his own personal motives. By doing so, he is burying our hostages alive in Hamas tunnels.
It's crystal clear that the renewal of the war is for political reasons and not for security reasons. It's very, very clear. The radical ministers have not even tried to hide it. They didn't do it behind closed door. They announce it every day. Either he renews the war or he doesn't have a government.
אם ניכנע לתכתיבי החמאס עכשיו, כל ההישגים האדירים שהשגנו בזכות לוחמינו, בזכות חללינו, בזכות פצועינו הגיבורים, כל ההישגים הללו פשוט ירדו לטמיון.
Israel has killed at least 51,000 Palestinians since October 2023, including 17,400 children. Let that sink in. That many is children. And it's going to keep happening. And whatever you're doing right now is what you would be doing during the Holocaust and World War II. Whatever you're doing right now, whether it's whining and crying on Twitter and TikTok, or not even supporting this cause at all. Maybe you're defending Zionism. Maybe you're loving your two-state citizenship that you have so you can go back and forth between the U.S. and Israel. And maybe you see this as a necessary evil to preserve your faith and your people. When, had you not been doing this, you'd be welcomed all over the world if you weren't a genocidal maniac of a nation. Next, I want to share a little bit of some of the Easter Sunday celebrations here. And this is at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in occupied East Jerusalem. And this is the moment an Israeli officer aims his gun at a Christian worshiper. So you think, oh, it's just Muslims, it's just Arabs. Oh, no, it's Christians too, and it doesn't matter. They don't like you. They don't care what religion you are. If you're not a Zionist Jew, then you're wrong. Then you're wrong. You backed the wrong horse. Unless you're happily here to support their occupation, they don't want you. And they were blocking people from getting in to the place where it is believed that Jesus was buried. This is believed to be the location of the tomb, and that is what the church is built on and what it celebrates. I've been there. I've seen it. And yet here we are. They're blocking people and putting guns to their heads. So they denied him entry. You can see right there where they pulled a gun on his head. I'll go back a little bit. Really quick. Yep, there it is. It was right there. Harassing, blocking, and shoving churchgoers, as well as a priest gathering for Easter services. Now, why would they be dragging the police out? or the priest out. Why would the police do that, huh?
كل عام في سبت النور بيكون أسوأ من اللي قبله من حيث تعامل الشرطة الإسرائيلية على السنة تجديد كثير كبير عرقلة كبيرة جدا أعداد قليلة جدا من المسيحية فقط اللي قدروا أنه يدخلوا ويوصلوا شوفوا معي شوفوا ساعة كنيسة الأيام طلعوا قد فاضية كلها فاضية والشرطة مانعة حدا أنه يدخل ويوصل حتى لساحة الكنيسة.
Pilgrims from around the world visit Jerusalem for Easter. Very true. They don't like Christians.
أزقة البلدة القديمة اللي قدر يوصل محشور فيها والكنيسة من هون فاضية وجوا الكنيسة لسه في كثير أماكن فاضية اللي بوسع الناس. الشرطة آلاف الشرطة اللي موجودين هون هم المخدين المكان هم المخدين المكان.
It's not an issue of space. They say it's for security reasons, yeah.
The main goal of the Israel police today is to ensure safety and security.
Yeah,
the
that's
church
why you're
leaders,
putting
together
guns
with
to people's
security,
heads for no
together
reason.
with safety engineers, decided these numbers based off of the density inside, based off of emergency exits and different things of the sort that are related to their profession.
Definitely not true. Most Christians from the occupied West Bank were not allowed in. Only 6,000 permits to the West Bank Christians this year. So what does that mean? Well, that means you have to get permits if you want to come into Jerusalem, you want to go to church, you want to worship, you want to run a business, whatever it may be, you have to get a permit. And if you're denied, you don't get in. That's an apartheid state. That is segregation, despite the community numbering around 50,000 in Palestinian territories.
We couldn't get to Jerusalem because not everyone is getting Israeli military permits.
Yep.
We believe that the Holy Sepulchre Church is a core foundation, if not the place that ignited Christianity.
Yeah.
We can't even get there because of the checkpoints.
There you go. Say they're praying for peace. While Israel wages war, genocide, on Palestinians 80 kilometers away.
La risurrezione di Gesù Cristo ci insegna a tutti che niente nel nostro mondo merita l'odia, merita uccidere, merita trattare gli altri come animali. L'amore di Gesù Cristo è vinto. Niente merita odia, c'è solo amore. Per tutti dobbiamo vedere gli altri come i figli di Dio, musulmani, cristiani, ebrei,
Muslims,
atei.
Christians, atheists. Around 100 Palestinians in Gaza were killed during Easter. There you go. That's how much they care about Christianity over in Israel. Holding guns to Christian worshippers, doesn't matter what race you are. Gun to your head. Next, I want to talk a little bit about what the journalists have to say about what's happening over there right now. From the journalists, shrapnel pierced my liver, but it didn't pierce the truth. Journalists working in Gaza have refused to stop reporting, and has cost many of them their lives. Here's what that work means in their own words, and it's important that we hear from these journalists. Every time I document a massacre or event or bombing, I think that maybe through this bombing or this image, the war could stop, and that this war would end. This drives us to continue in our coverage to our last breath. Anas al-Sharif, Al Jazeera correspondent to Dropside News, says, photojournalist Fatma Hassouna told her colleague Abdul Rahman Ismail the following before Israel killed her on April the 16th. The thing I'm best at is laughing. And don't be scared. I'm strong and can handle myself. What matters is that you stay alive and leave Gaza for the world. There's a small thing beating inside us, something that resembles a dream, but it's unclear. What do we really want? We want to live. That's all. Abdul Rahman Ismail, photojournalist. Bisan Oda, you know her. When we were young, we used to wait to come back home from school to watch Space Tune and dream about the future. I never thought that this is what awaited us. I've been homeless for a year, and my people are fighting extinction at the hands of the biggest monster in the universe and the most despicable nation in humanity. Isan. Even the camera became a target. Shrapnel pierced my liver, but it didn't pierce the truth. We were documenting people's pain, and we became the pain. We are not silent. The enemy is targeting our voices, but the voice is still alive. And that's how brave these journalists are. This is Abdullah Al-Attar. Just incredibly brave people to be speaking out in the face of danger. And of course, Hossam Shabbat, Al Jazeera Mubasher reporter, killed by an Israeli airstrike on March 23rd. Covered a lot of his reports and a lot of his son's reports on the channel. I documented the horrors in northern Gaza minute by minute, determined to show the world the truth they tried to bury. I slept on pavements, in schools, in tents, anywhere I could. Each day was a battle for survival. I endured hunger for months, yet I never left my people's side. I ask you now, do not stop speaking about Gaza. Do not let the world look away. Keep fighting, keep telling our stories until Palestine is free. Hossam Shabbat, Al Jazeera Mubasher reporter. 2 weeks after Israel killed Hossam Shabbat, his brother, also a journalist, posted this. Despite the hundreds of journalists murdered and despite the harsh realities we face as a result of the genocide, we remain steadfast in sharing the truth with the world. Wissam Shabbat. Courageous, just like his brother. Incredible. Journalists are still continuing every day and every hour to report what is happening. This is what makes us continue. That this is our cause. It is the duty of the world to see and witness what we are documenting and what we are reporting. Maybe the world won't act. Maybe the world won't help us. But there might be a motive to stop this war. Anas al-Sharif. And these are the Palestinian journalists. They're braver than any other person in this world right now. And we need to hear our voices. So share their voices and let this story get out there. And never forget these people. And follow them. Follow them online. You can find a lot of these guys on Twitter, on various social media, TikTok, all this stuff. Don't let them be forgotten, and don't let their words fall on deaf ears. And it's our responsibility to share their words and to let the truth get out there. So that's what we must do, is to carry the torch, as Hossam said, that now we have to pick up and carry the torch for those who are no longer here. We have to speak for them. Now, this next thing is from Al Jazeera. This is about Gaza, the first live streamed genocide. They've actually done something really cool here, and they've made a page where you can go and search this database documenting Israeli war crimes in Gaza. Videos, photos, posted online by the Israeli soldiers themselves. And I can just kind of like quickly tab through this slideshow. They identify soldiers. They identify what they did, because a lot of these guys just straight up posted it on Instagram. They destroyed homes, hospitals, and schools. And they admit to it. They abuse and mistreat detainees. War crimes. They loot homes. They light things on fire. They wear women's lingerie. They make crass jokes. These are all things, by the way, that if you were a United States soldier, you would be absolutely booted out and tried. Israeli forces genocidal intent. You can see all the evidence there. And so I'm going to pull up the site, but you can go to aljazeera.com/Gaza investigation. Some 250 videos have been compiled exposing the conduct of the Israeli military and their actions in Gaza. So we can scroll here. You can see articles. You can see videos. You can tab over each of the soldiers. You can see how they treat detainees. You can start exploring the database. You can see the wanton destruction where they shoot grenade launchers over the fence, mortar strikes, bombing schools, hospitals, churches. You can see all that. Abuse and mistreatment of detainees, whether it's taking their clothes off, whether it's raping them, whether it's blindfolding them, all these various things, beating them. The use of human shields, killing and targeting of civilians. And then you can see the entire catalog categorizing what type of crime is it, what's the description, and where is the source. So whether it's bombing neighborhoods, apartments, mosques, institutions, torching homes. And then you can go through here and you can see all the Israeli guys trying on bras, wearing panties and thongs, and burning rugs, destroying art, throwing a PlayStation at a TV. All of these things that they do that are, you know, incredibly juvenile, but still, nevertheless, these men are adults. You know, they may be 18, they may be 20, they may be older than that, but these are war criminals. And of course, here's the crass jokes, which, once again, it's not necessarily illegal, but it speaks to their conduct. It speaks to their mindset. And then, of course, there's expressing genocidal intent. And so you can see all that compiled here. Once again, that's aljazeera.com/Gaza investigation. Check it out. Next, there is a shark attack on an Israeli diver on Olga Beach in occupied Palestine. I'm just going to play the video here. But this is a shark attack on an Israeli diver in Olga Beach. And so they are now calling the shark a Hamas shark. And this is an ex-IDF soldier. So you get what you deserve. Sharks don't usually attack humans. That's all I've got to say on that. I would call that shark a good boy. Next, I have a video here from Bisan about what's happening in Gaza right now. Let's take a look.
In what we call in Majlis Tashri'i, the Parliament Council, the west of Gaza. And you need to know that people from Beit Hanun, from the north of Gaza Strip, from the east of Gaza Strip, went to the west of the city to form huge camps in the middle of the remains of the city. Look at the amount of the camps. This was a park. This was a park and a square. They rehabilitated the place to build this huge camp, living in horrific conditions, without enough food, without sanitary, without sewage system, without bathrooms.
We used to live in mansions and villas. 65 years old with flies attacking me at night.
As for the bathrooms,
there you go.
They dig a hole in the ground and then they put curtains around the place and they form a bathroom, like this place, for example.
Like an outhouse. 420,000 people have been displaced since March 18th in Gaza. We fled in a hurry. Your area is red and you must evacuate. We left everything, our home stuff and everything. We didn't take anything and we came here. We found a bit of an empty space. We spent a whole week cleaning it up while we were fasting during Ramadan. We made a kitchen, a bathroom, and here's the tent. Each one of my children used to have one. Now we're all in one tent. I share it with my sons and daughter-in-law. Israel authorities have blocked all humanitarian aid and supplies to Gaza since March 2nd. We're looking at over 50 days. 50 days with no aid. No drinkable or salt water. No wood, no gas, no food. Finding food is difficult. Those who have a bit of flour are careful with it now. Now if people ask for some flour, you'd have to say no because you want to feed your children. Lack of flour and cooking has forced many bakeries to close. And also the other thing is that we're seeing kids sort out contaminants from the flour. There's no flour or anything due to the closure of the crossing.
بكفي الخبز
Is the bread enough? It's not enough.
ولكن واحد
We have
بده
to
يمشي
make
حاله.
do.
يعني إذا العيلة كانت تاكل 10
And you
اليوم
see 10
بتخلص صارت
pieces of
تاكل
bread is
5
now down to 5 or 4.
نعم بدك تعجني لسه
Going to need some more. Wait another hour and come back so the dough doesn't
أنا عندي
spoil.
بناتي وأولادي
My daughters, sons, and family evacuated from Beit Lahia and are here with me. We don't have a single grain of flour. This is why I had to come to this bakery, and yet I haven't been able to make enough to buy a bag of flour for 4 days, I swear to God. It's the desperation that they're living in. All I went for buying the oven. $1.06 per kilo. You buy this paper. I went out to look for an oven. This one is faulty. It's burning me. Look at my hands. My knees are the same. Look.
I'm now in what we
That's the situation. With no aid coming into Gaza, this is how people are getting by. Now, as we get to near the end of the video here, Israel's actions in Gaza are back in front of the eyes of our international courts.
Gaza are back in front of the International Court of Justice. It's facing a 5-day hearing on whether it's breached the UN Charter with its blockade of aid to Palestinians. This is a separate case to the warrants issued by the International Criminal Court for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defence Minister Yoav Gallant, or the genocide case at the ICJ. So here's the backstory. Israel is a signatory of the UN Charter. It's also a full member. That means it has responsibilities to the UN and its organisations. It's also legally considered an occupying power and has legal humanitarian obligations to those under its control. And this is where the court comes in. The question, does Israel's behaviour meet its legal obligations? During the Gaza war, Israel's repeatedly bombed UN buildings, vehicles, and killed more than 200 of its staff. Israel's accused the UN's humanitarian agency for Palestine, UNRWA, of colluding with Hamas in the attack on Israel on October 7, 2023. UNRWA strenuously denies that charge. UNRWA is the main agency that provides aid and services to more than 5 million Palestinians across the occupied territories and in Israel. In October, the Knesset passed a law prohibiting state organisations, including the military, from having any contact with UNRWA, and then the next month banned the agency from Israel and the occupied territories. And then on March 2, it blocked all aid to Gaza, sparking yet another humanitarian catastrophe in a territory it has legal obligations as a UN member to administer. Israel's being accused of multiple breaches to international law. But here's the kicker. Whatever the ICJ concludes will be an advisory opinion. It won't be legally binding, which means if it's critical, Israel will likely ignore it, just as it's done for every other international legal ruling.
There you go. Something has to be done. It can't just be ignored every single time that they are coming up with a case here. All right. Last thing I want to talk about, and this is more in relation to Trumpism. This is what cult survivors are seeing in Trumpism that a lot of people miss. And of course, as people who have escaped a cult, they recognize the signs in Trump's movement. The idolization, the slogans, the us versus them thinking. It mirrors everything that they've been taught to follow without question. In cults, loyalty is to the leader. It's more important than truth, relationships, or even personal well-being. Watching people turn on loved ones to defend Trump reminds people of what blind allegiance looks like. Cult leaders keep people obedient by making them fear what will happen if they leave. Trump uses the same tactic, painting apocalyptic pictures of America without him. Loaded language like fake news or witch hunt serves the same purpose as cult jargon. It shuts down independent thinking and protects the leader from criticism. And of course, those of them who have lived through high control groups see the warning signs in plain sight. Their goal is to help others see them too before they become trapped in something they can't see clearly from the inside. And that's how MAGA actually is a cult, because just like that, you would drink the Kool-Aid and end yourself at the behest of one man. If he asked you to do it, you'd say how and why, and get right to it immediately. And that's the issue, that it is absolutely a cult that worships one man and only he can save us. That's crazy. So I want to thank you for watching Aaron Shack Politics. I want to thank you for sharing these videos and getting the word out there. This is really important to me. Don't forget to follow us on TikTok, Twitter, Blue Sky, Substack, and of course YouTube. Because I am going to be hosting panels and be guesting on panels on TikTok, and so I'm going to try to share as much as that of that content in multiple places. But you know, this is literally a one-man production, so I can only do so much, and I can only do it so fast. But just know that I'm never giving up, and that, you know, we're gonna have deeper and bigger conversations on this, and I want to be a beacon of information, and I want to share what's going on, and I want to talk to other people, especially Palestinians, but a lot of other people that are a part of this movement in helping Palestine be free, because I think if it's ever been likely, it's probably going to happen within the next several years or so. And it's only going to happen if we all band together and support a free Palestine. So I want to thank you for all your support. It really keeps me going. I appreciate the kind words and thoughts. Just know that I, you know, even if I'm working hard and doing lots of things and multitasking, I appreciate and read every single comment that comes through. So thank you all. Take care. Be safe. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye.